of stuff. So
yeah, God, that's a lot of history right there. See, that's the book right there. You gotta like put that in detail, because you gotta
Yes,
have some
sir.
history in dealing in the service. Because it's real interesting
Yes, sir.
because a sister that you was very close with, a lot of most precious jewel. She
we,
was building with me.
I
She
was
was building with me on the history of Fort Dix and the gods. She told me a lot about the history of Fort Dix, believe it or not. And I was totally shocked and surprised because I didn't have any idea that gods ever went to Fort Dix except for Allah's father when he had went, for a short extended time. But she told me that the gods was out there. I don't know if they was in service or what they was doing with, but I know she mentioned
you had to mention
he from Medina. She definitely mentioned him to me because I was like, really? I didn't know that. And she just told me like some of the travels, and she was going out there and dealing with out there, which is kind of similar to what you're saying. It kind of overlaps. It appears because I'm like, oh, okay, that's just like the current that it seemed like people was on. Coming in from New York City over there to New Jersey and dealing with that situation. As young people. You know what I mean, God?
okay.
And God, I got a lot of questions, God.
Yeah.
Like,
Before we go on, one of the things that I mentioned in our first interview, the fact that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had said to the chaplain that I was qualified to teach Islam, and that's the only way we was able to get Qurans in the barracks. So all the barracks received holy Qurans, well, not holy Qurans, glorious Quran. They gave us those, and so that's a heavy achievement, for the messenger of God, give you permission, because that's the way. Because I used to deal with the chaplain all the time when I'm in solitary confinement. I also talked about that with the guards. When I went to the stockade, I always went to solitary, because I told them I'm not working, I'm not cooking, I'm not cleaning, I'm not doing nothing. But I'm going to study. I'm going to go in my spot. I had a special cell. Allahmal had a special cell I would go to and just stay there and study. And there used to be a goon squad that came on at 12 o'clock. And when they're on, because they used to click, 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 the things on their head, coming to my cell to see if they broke me yet. I said, man, listen, I don't have to eat, They said, did you eat your food? I said, no, that pork on it. He said, why? Just take the pork off. I said, listen, as long as y'all keep doing that. But I knew after 7 days, like I told the guard, the chaplain have to come. No, not after 7 days. And then, so I used to build with the chaplain, about the scriptures. He said, well, I guess you do know a lot. You in here studying. That's all you do is study, So I got all the books. I got all the Jehovah's Witness books. I mastered all the books. I read and studied everything. Let me just put it that way, So that's when I knew that I would be in all ciphers. I'm not just here or there. I am everywhere. See? I don't deal with just a few square miles. I am everywhere. So when I finally was let go from the military, and while I used to be airway, I used to live with Allahmal Special Jewel on Herzen Street. Okay, not too far from the Betsy Hay pool. And I used to be. Well, she had on her walls was all the mathematics was on the walls, the alphabets was on the walls. Her walls was covered with just the knowledge of the, So I used to just talk. Me and her used to just really build, man. She loved me, man. I got some of her private stuff that I gotta find it.
That's what I was going to ask you too. Being that you mentioned that was the question that slipped my mind. When we talked about the archangels and like how they would always construct plus degrees. like, did you have any of, you know, some of your old or some of the old plus degrees from any of the wisdom bodies back during that time? You know, maybe in your book of life or anything that you know.
Of course, of course. No, I became I joined the first Muslims, otherwise known as God of the Universe, whilst I was in the penitentiary in Atlantic Avenue.
Okay.
I met Ubika. Ubika was in there during that time. Understanding Allah was in there. Allah was in there. Dutch Schultz was in there. Kino was in there. You know, all the big, they was getting, what you call that law? They were snatching the big time dealers. Anyway, Dutch Schultz was waiting to get his 15 years, and
What was his name? Dutch Schultz.
Dutch Schultz. Never heard of Dutch Schultz?
Dutch
Yeah.
Schultz. Oh, I thought that was a gangster from back in the early
was.
1900s, a Jewish
It
gangster.
was, but this was the black one.
Oh, okay. Somebody, yeah. We love taking white people names and making it our own. White gangsters. I'm Gotti now.
But
Yes, sir.
I remember a lot more special Jew told me, well, bounties, which one was it? One of the guards went down south. He wanted to become a pimp. You know, a lot of different things happened in Medina. We used to meet on Herzl Street, Herzl and Georgia, and we used to build right around that. Around there, there was a house called 578 Georgia Avenue, Georgia or Sheffield, 578. Where the lady of that house used to take people used to come to her with their I think with their food stamps, things for her to change and things like that. Anyway, I remember she said, well, he went down there and he drowned. Now I always had it was always a suspect to me how you know all of a sudden he goes down there to do to pimp and he finds him drowned. All right, so that's dangerous. So, different gods was, some of the gods was passing. Me and Father Divine, I remember, used to build a lot in the projects because I used to be at 568 Hinsdale Street, and Father Divine lived in the projects. Like, I would say, let me see, you got Linden Boulevard, three blocks, okay, 3 blocks, the projects. In the project, the way that it's made in the middle of the project, there's like a big rocks, stone.
Your phone, your camera. Oh, okay.
It'd be big, And
Yes,
sometimes when I went up there, I had my a sister that I knew who became Jewel. Her name is Jewel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the wives that I took on,
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, I heard you build the last time, and well, not build, but you mentioned one of the degrees that the gods and particularly yourself that like to build on. The 20th degree and the 1 to 40.
The prescribed law of Islam of a said person of that ability.
Ability, yes, sir. Yeah, and while you building, I kind of wanted you to go into that as well. Because I remember you mentioned that the last time, and I said I'm gonna build on that degree with the God the next time.
Well, the way I saw that degree, it closes out the 16-7, the knowledge equality, knowledge building, knowledge born degree. But because if those degrees talks about the meaning of civilization, what is the duty of a civilized person, if a civilized person does not perform his duty, and then you got to prescribe law. Now, so it all it all goes together. if you received the lesson, that's your prescription to become God. If you study, if you become studious and know your lesson, the 11th degree, the alphabet is king, right? I believe so. Yeah. So when I did with my studies was I always dealt with the degree of the day. I deal with all of them. Have you not learned that your word is bond? That's the 11th degree, right? You got it for what? You know. So the plus degrees, I had plus degrees, which is I gave to Wakeel received some of them from me.
Yeah, no, definitely, God. All praise to Allah.
30. Tell us how Allah created the sun in the above, how Allah created the moon in the above. You know.
You know, God. Can I just add on real quick, God? I just want to I'm trying to interject this. And that's what kind of reset the room in a sense for the listeners. You know, we deal with the science and the history of the 5% nation, right? Then you got, you know, Allah and the wisdom body and the first Muslims, you know, which many people would consider them to be quote unquote Muslim gods. But to set the base of the history, you know, as it relates to your lineage, go all the way back to the Father, Allah, that these group of individuals, you know, such as yourself, right, was dealing real hard with the lessons, 120 lessons, the supreme wisdom, right? And it was in the beginning stages, like of the 5% nation, right? We talk about 64 and 65, when the first brother, you know, AKA Robert Walker, victorious, you know, God Allah, he was in Mattawan with the father, and he was one of the brothers that intensely studied the lessons, right? To the point where in the beginning of the 5% nation, because I'm trying to synthesize it too, the first Muslims and the, you know, regular 5%, you know, brothers, even though the first Muslims was 5%ers too. What separated you brothers in a sense was the fact of how studious and how independent y'all was, especially with the first principle being the black man is God and y'all are Allah. You mentioned, you know, your name in a sense as Allah when you escaped from Fort Dix, and the people were saying Allah himself escaped, right? So you brothers took on the name Allah, which at a point in time, the 5%ers under the direction of Allah the Father did not call themselves Allah. You know, the Father said at that point he was the only Allah, and you brothers starting with, you know, Allah, aka Allah and the wisdom body. I don't want to say in a sense had the conversation and challenge Allah on the point that he also was Allah, and the father, you know, bore witness that the brother was telling truth because it's in the Muslim lessons. That's a Muslim teaching, that the black man is Allah and that y'all are Allah. And from y'all being so independent, y'all took on, and I think what distinguished y'all to what Fahiym is alluding to, what distinguished you brothers is that y'all didn't just restrict yourselves in a sense to the study of 120, but y'all opened up yourselves to the entire body of knowledge and wisdom coming from the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in the nation of Islam, in which how y'all discovered, hey, we supreme Allah too. You know what I mean? And Allah the Father bore witness to that. And it seemed like for a certain period of time, he told the 5% as well, just stay away from them brothers for now, because y'all not ready to deal with them, in a sense, right? But then eventually, y'all brothers started changing your names to Supreme and Born and Angels and Glorious and these different names, like with Allah on them. And that's when Allah, the Father, it appeared that y'all brothers influenced, especially Medina, the 5% nation, because then the 5% nation started taking on those names. Because before that, the brothers had just, you know, names, you know, Wakeel, Fahiym, Kareem, you know, Al-Jabbar, Hassan. So it's like y'all went into, like what they were saying, the Nation of Islam would be like the high scientist that was in the
esoteric
was like that on the 5% nation side. And then somehow, when y'all started saying y'all was Allah, then the Father, quote unquote, gave brothers permission under him to start to call themselves Allah. then it seemed like the two kind of synthesized. And one of the biggest misnomers, I think, in the Five-Percent Nation is that they make it appear that y'all are at odds with one another, you know? And so you hear brothers saying like Allah the Father was almost against, you know, Allah and the wisdom body and all this. But when I spoke to Sister Allah Most Precious Jewel, she like blew my mind with the history on that. Really, I got to credit her a lot with what I heard as related to this, because she said emphatically no. She said she was rolling with y'all, you know, Allah and the wisdom body. She said she herself would go with Allah, Katanga, and everybody to see the Father, and it was all good. She said they had a very good relationship. You know what I mean? But you don't hear that being taught in the Five-Percent Nation. And typically, the majority of the brothers in the Five-Percent Nation, especially the younger ones that wasn't around at the time, don't really know that history. You know what I mean? And you appear to kind of synthesize that when you said you connected with Duma, and it's the same Duma that began to refer to himself as the national representative of the nation of gods and earth, right? So y'all obviously had a good relationship. So can you build on that? What was the relationship like between the brothers that identify themselves as Allah, or like you said, the Muslims, gods of the universe, with the other brothers? And then I want you also to speak on when Allah the Father was assassinated, June 13th, 1969, how did that reverberate amongst the first Muslims and Allah and the wisdom body? Because some say that at that point, he tried to replace the Father and came to the parliament and was building with Kareem, firstborn Messiah, and firstborn Uhuru. Can you walk us through that history? Like, what was your perspective, and where were you at when you heard that Allah the Father was assassinated, and how did that impact the Five Percenters and the first Muslims?
Okay. June of 1969, that particular, I'll say from May and June, I was heavy into the mosque. Like I said, getting my ex. I got my ex in May 1960. So when the father got assassinated, I was in Medina. We got the word, and what came down to us was that, you know, there's nothing we can do except keep teaching, keep building. Now, the sister, Allahmal Special Jewel, that you mentioned, me and her was real close because we rolled together a lot. You know, I used to go with her to the Jewish merchants that had material on Sutter Avenue, on Pickett Avenue, you know, and the sister, she was so powerful. She used to go in. She said, "Come on," she said, "Come on, Allah." We go into the store, and when we both was finished, she had you know, a lot of material for the babies, for their dashikis she used to make. So the babies always had, you know, nice. She had some problems with some of the gods. Let me make that clear, because of how she was with us, with myself. Her love for the minister. Okay, I remember in 90. What was it? I'm jumping to in reference to the. She always wanted to meet the minister, and when she found out that, you know, I had some kind of connection that I could get, like when the minister came to town, I would be able to You know, so she came to the mosque. You know, she was a sister that studied everything. You know, she was like myself in a way. You know, and we walked Medina, man. You know, and like I said, I have her accomplishment books. You know, the studies that the things that she accomplished with schooling. I got her diplomas. I have to build that out. But anyway, yeah, God. But after the father left, what he was, Robert Walker, the great God of wisdom, right? He says the reason the father didn't want his babies to clash with the first Muslims is because he said, I'm the only Allah in the 5% because his children was the babies. And the babies are the greatest, but the first Muslim had arisen to a higher level of study and understanding. They studied the Quran very well. You know, a lot of plus lessons came out of the Quran. Okay? A lot of people don't know that. A lot of lessons came out of the Religion of Islam book.
Right.
Not too many people have that book, but it's a lot of science in there. Now, my air like eventually became Gala. Allah was my knowledge body, and organic Allah was the understanding of us three. Imminent Allah was the first archangel. He was an Asani, and the father instruction. I'm talking about Robert Walker. He used to send, for some reason, Allah used to tell him things about myself, how I had, dealing with the campus and all that type of stuff. And he said, well, he made me the supreme minister of the first Muslim nation. And there was a lot of things, that we had to go through, a lot of tests. There's certain things that it's hard to say around the system because it could cause, I don't want to cause no problem. But you had Jewel, Equasia, and Share, a few other systems that I was teaching at some point. And moving it up to after the first res, as it's called, and the Nation of Islam fell. It's very important to understand the history pertaining to why it fell and why it would not fall nevermore. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad himself said he foresaw it because the nation itself was going after the material things. This is what people don't understand. So there wasn't the type of study that was supposed to take place amongst the believers. And so they didn't have the lessons on cap like the family brothers and Muslim brothers. So myself, Allah, we running Medina, man, doing a lot of different things, just teaching. I know one thing, as I was growing, and I used to see Allah all organic coming to a cipher, and it's like nobody was able to touch them gods, man. They were so sharp. They were sharper. They were way sharper than me at that time. And organic had access to the Masonic signs. He was able to go anywhere and do. These gods, man, you had to know them to understand them. There was and you have understanding. Understanding. He was a small brother, also like imminent. Understanding was the first one that showed him proof that he can disappear and appear on the other side of a wall. Listen, I don't deal with that because how that happened, I can't prove nothing of that. All I know is some of the things that was done. Some of the things, let me say this here. Some of the things the first Muslims did. I remember when I went to Attica, one of the other archangels called Glorious, a knowledge seed, jet black. Wakeel, did you meet him? Did you meet Glorious?
Yeah, I built with Glorious, sure indeed.
You built with, okay.
Very intelligent brother, yes sir.
Yeah, when I went to Attica, he seemed to have had a control of, some of the gods, because if anything, you heard that, Attica was not any place to play with. It was one of the toughest penitentiary. Now, I was like I said, the supreme minister at that time, and I was able to go to all of the penitentiaries that the first Muslims was at.
Right. Yo, yeah.
Doc,
that's some history right there.
yeah.
No, I'm laughing in a sense because oftentimes when you do hear about the discrepancies as it relates to within the 5% or the first Muslims of the 5%, typically it is centered around the prison system. So it seemed like there was something going on in the prison system in which the brothers maybe was at just with one another, you know what I mean, and how they built, It's kind of similar to how it is in the Nation of Islam in the prison system back in those days in the 70s and whatnot. In the prison system, you had like the Nation of Islam, then you had like the New World of Islam, right? And they kind of had the different discrepancies in there, you know what I mean? It seemed like it was a bit similar with those brothers, in the prison system. But the basic point that I wanted to really get at was that outside of that realm, though, in the regular cipher, if I can go on what Sister Allahmal Precious Jewel was saying, and even, actually, Allah in the Wisdom Body told me this himself, you know what I mean? Because I wanted to know, when I asked him, while he's, still incarcerated, I wanted to know what discrepancy, if any, did him and Allah the Father have, and he said there was no discrepancy. And I said, well, what about this Muslim thing? You know what I mean? Because the brothers now make it appear that there's a huge animosity, damn near hate the Muslims. Like, how did you and the Father, when you said the first Muslims, how did that go? I asked him, did Allah the Father teach that the black man was a Muslim? He said emphatically yes. So I'm like, well, damn, from which came the division? You know what I mean? What was y'all teaching that was different from what the other brothers were teaching? Was it Allahmal Muhammad is the last and greatest messenger of Allah? Did some of the brothers have problems with that? Absolutely. Was it that you were identified as a Muslim? Was y'all studying the science of everything in life? Or was it just the animosity? What was the division and what was really the unity. You know what I mean? Because you could explain that you was there. Because you sound like a brother. You and Shabane and different brothers, you know, you brothers sound like y'all was getting along pretty much with everybody, and it wasn't really any challenges. I'm really saying this for the newer brothers in the Nation of God who feel that there should be some kind of division between those that identify, or those, I'll say it like this, God, because today is the knowledge day. Have you learned that your word shall be bond regardless of whom or what? Yes, my word is my bond, and my bond is my life. And I should give my life before my word shall fail. Now, only a Muslim can say that in the cipher that's dealing with 120, right? A regular 5% brother, he may not, his word is not bond on 120 lessons because he don't bear witness to 120 in its fullness. You know, especially that part that Allah is a Muslim. That's why I asked Allah in the Wisdom Body, Brother Robert Walker, did Allah the Father bear witness to 120 word for word? You know what I mean? Especially at that point, a Muslim, in the most honorable Elijah Muhammad being a messenger of Allah. Now, he bore witness to that 100%. And me coming up in the 5% Nation of Islam in 1983, all the 5% bore witness to that. You know, when I got it, it was like later with the advent of the Nation of Gods and Earth, somehow or another it got lost, and now you got this different history that's out here and out there that's kind of creating animosity. It look like it's those that deal with the Muslims or those that deal with 120, like straight word for word, or word is bond. Not even playing with it, not a joke at all, right? Then you got the other brothers that kind of mock that. So how do you synthesize the two? And then I got another question for you guys. It's real hardcore. Are those brothers 10%ers? Or the brothers who deny the lessons 10%ers? You cool with some of the brothers, I'm cool with some of the brothers, but all the brothers 10%ers that deny Allah in the person of Master Muhammad and the most honorable mystery Elijah Muhammad, are they 10%ers for teaching against them? I don't care if they're good standing, whatever standing they are, God. Are they 10%ers, God, in accordance with the degree?
I was gonna say, I just wanted to add on real quick to what Brother Wakeel was saying, and that was the reason why I asked the God about the Wisdom Cipher degree and the 1 to 40. You know what I'm saying? Because in that answer, you know, it says that, you know, they'll be punished by the Nation of Islam. So that, to what Brother Wakeel is saying, are those brothers really 5%ers? Are they really, you know, under the same laws as the Nation of Islam? Because we say Nation of Islam, not just the brothers in the mosque, but 5%ers as well. The original 5%ers were the 5% Nation of Islam. Correct. You know,
from the oldest to the firstborns, I never heard nobody deny the lessons. You know, Brother Shamgad said we was known as Allah's Nation of Islam. You know, and that was in '83 when I came into the knowledge itself. So whence come, you know, what, and then what happened? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, we gotta remember this. I mentioned earlier about the fall of the Nation of Islam in 75, and when the minister decided that he wanted to rebuild, so he had mentioned it to Waheed. Waheed was a slim brother in the Nation of Islam. He's still around, as far as I know. And matter of fact, I give him a call. We stay in contact every once in a while because he traveled with the minister when they came to Brooklyn College. Now, in the fall of 1977, at Baruch College, that's where the minister stated his intention in reference to rebuilding. And he wanted to know all the people that was there was invited as special guests. It wasn't a walk-in meeting. It was a private meeting. He wanted to ask people that he knew would they help him. So after he said what he had to say, you know, whoever was there would make, they would make a decision at some point if they was going to help the minister or they wasn't going to. Because some of them, quite a few of them, was with Warif Dean. Yes, quite a few was with Warif Dean because the brother that made Baruch College available was from that community. Okay. And, God, I told you his name like I tell you, sometimes I forget. I told Fahiym.
He made it available, and when the minister made the call to rebuild the Nation of Islam, when you about to go into the science where the father said help him.
I was trying to remember the name of the brother. We was working together in the youth program called Youth Homes.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I can't remember the name though.
It was Elijah Etheridge. Elijah Etheridge. Right? He had very influential in the community. Matter of fact, he's the one that was responsible for me and my wife being, you know, what is called when Juneteenth was very new. We was one of the first, what you call that? First marshals. Okay, of that. But going back to the invitation from him, he was able to get Baruch College, which he was taking some courses, I guess. And he said, Allahmal, you know, I'm going to, you know, let the minister come there and, you know, and talk to those that he feels that he needs to help. Hey, make a long story short, once that meeting was over, he said he was going to get the books back. He spoke about Shalom, you know, and other things. He wanted to raise the messenger name back up to where it belonged, etc., etc. And when he finished, that's when I hit him. I called him the apostle at that time. You know, remember now, this is 77. So I asked him, I said, would you mind coming to speak at Brooklyn College? You know, he like I told Fahiym, he smirked a little bit because that was like asking supposedly a ridiculous question because it's a Jewish school. They're not going to allow him on campus. So why am I asking him? So anyway, make a long story short, he said, "Brother, you look like you look like you're serious. Can you achieve that?" He said, "If you do, I will come." Okay, I went to work. I had to make it happen. And of course, by me having the type of power I had on campus with the president of the school, his name was Nella at that time. It can be, you know, looked up. I'm always, I like for the researcher to always do those research. His name was President Nella, and you had Nella was a Shriner. The dean of students was Dean Jones. He had a hair full of white. Dean Jones. So I had access to those two men. I was able to walk in without any appointment when nobody else was able to do that. You know, some of the instructors didn't understand that. But when I talked to Nella. I said, "Listen, man, this got to be a real tight security." I just told him that Minister Farrakhan is to give a message on campus. I didn't ask. See, I was that bold. That's what I learned from some of the first Muslims.
Indeed. Are you going to parlay? Because I know we dealt with that in part one. rather in detail about the college event when you brought the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan to speak there. And it sounds like you're about to go into, because part of the history and the narrative is that, okay, well, when Honorable Louis Farrakhan stood up to rebuild the Nation of Islam, and the call went out there, that some of the 5% brothers came to assist in that process. Right? Are you about to go into that?
Yes, I was going to say, that point is that most of the 5%ers came to that event, but they wanted to hear what the minister was going to, what was he going to say pertaining to rebuilding the Nation of Islam. Because remember this, the 5%ers at that time, this is late 70s, Ronald Stewart was there, Minister Hawk, became Minister Hawk in the Nation of Islam. He was at that meeting. One of the few guys was at that meeting. I was busy trying to make things happen, and the minister came like damn near by himself. I had Hamza from he was with Warif Dean, but he said if I could get the minister to come to speak, he would help me with the security, because that's what he did. He was a security man, and he knew the minister. He had what is called a security office on Notion Avenue, and Equasia was working there, who became, that was my son's mother, Halim, my first son. So she took care of all the paperwork and everything, to get the minister to come. She drew up the contract. Everything was good. So anyway, Hamza gets on campus. He's seeing the 5% brothers coming in. He gets paranoid. He gets shook. I mean, he was shook. I had to say, come on, brother, relax, man. These brothers is here to assist and help, and just hear what the minister. He said, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be part of the minister getting assassinated. All this kind of crazy. He was real paranoid.
You saying brother Hamza, that was the police officer that was in part of the first resurrection. Yeah. Brother Leonard Ware, like that, right?
Yes, him.
Mm.
Okay. So he passed now, though. Man, he rested in peace. But anyway, things went well. But before the meeting, we waited for people to come, gather in the auditorium, Whitman Auditorium. If that should be something that can be easily looked up. So me and the minister and Organic was just building, man. He wanted to know about Robert Walker. He said, well, at that time we calling him Allahu Akbar, he went through a whole lot of different, attributes. Robert Walker was a man, many names. But anyway,
he was almost like a Dr. York type of, with like a lot of different names, attributes.
Yes, you can.
Or similar. Yeah.
Different. So he says, listen. He said, well, where is he? He's asking us. He said, well, I told him, well, I don't concern myself. I received messages from him, and I just followed the instructions. But Organic, gave him well, he's in California building another nation called the Black Angels. This is history that people don't know. Robert Walker, his intention was to build, I don't know how many, but in different areas of North America. He was established, because he was so profound before he went into he went into confinement. But he had a nation in California. Then he was in the mosque in L.A., I heard, you know. So he was going around, whatever he was doing. I was
Yeah.
Was he going around like establishing, like how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad went around establishing mosques or temples? Was he going around establishing like schools, or you know?
He does build a couple of schools. You know, the first.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Black Angels was one.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that history guy and me in working on the history of the Nation of Islam, it's ironic because when people come to find out, okay, I wrote the book on the history of the 5 percenters, I started to get a lot of different feedback from brothers and sisters under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And Robert Walker's name would come up. You know, Minister Van, they used to be the minister in Atlanta. I know at one point in time, he said 78, 79, when they were getting the study groups up and going in Youngstown, Ohio, and there in the Ohio region, like the first study group was a group of 5 percenters. You know, he always told me that, but he didn't really narrow it down as to who it was, right? Then when I was at Chicago at Savior's Day, his sister approached me, and she started speaking on her contact with the 5 percenters. Robert Walker, Victorious, Allah, you know, in the Wisdom Body, in Ohio. And I was like, she said, yeah, we started a study group and everything with him, you know, under the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan. We had a study group on one side, on this side of town. There was a study group on that side of town. She went in detail. Then another believer, you know, spoke to me about California. And he said, yo, did you know, Brother Al Champagne, Allah in the Wisdom Body, Robert Walker. And I was like, what? He said, yeah. I was like, you knew him? It's like, brother, absolutely. Yeah. Brother came from New York. He came out here to the West Coast. Brother, he was lighting it up, teaching Islam. He said, in the neighborhoods in L.A., just teaching Islam, like, very strongly. Yeah, I was like, wow. I was like, man, I got to put that brother on to interview that brother. Very powerful brother in the nation of Islam. And I was like, he said, the way he described the brother, Robert Walker, he said that brother Kundalini was extremely, his Kundalini was very high. His magnetic, you know, that he had, and the mastery of the lessons, you know. And the thing that's interesting to me, going back to the narrative of the history and Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan rebuilding the Nation of Islam, you hear some people kind of slant that, and I think you dealt with that in the first part of the interview. But I always say, the 5 percenters, as was predicted by Allah the Father, he prepared the brothers to do a work within the Nation of Islam, which all of us are a part of. We're a part of the legacy and lineage that Allah the Father predicted and actually assisted to bring about. Because I always say in the 5% nation, nobody made more Muslims than Allah the Father. You know, Allah the Father made more Muslims than the average person here on the planet in the history. You know, as far as bringing brothers and sisters to the Nation of Islam, and what we all did after he left, you know, from the rap to Rakim to everything else. But the brothers and sisters who helped the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, they were of the 5% that Allah the Father spoke about. You know, they could not have been anti-Muslim, right? Or otherwise they would have rebuilt the Nation of Islam. These were brothers and sisters that identified as Muslim, which again, in the 70s, it didn't appear to be an issue. In the 70s, 120 was law, especially in the absence of the Nation of Islam when it fell in 1975, going up to 78. Right. The 5% nation damn near became the Nation of Islam. And they were also in the penitentiaries fighting against the brothers that converted to Orthodox Islam. So the 5 percenters at that time kept the name of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad alive because they still appeared to be intact what Allah the Father gave us, those mandates, you know, and brother or sister that helped to rebuild the Nation of Islam, that was not in accordance with that we are the Nation of Islam. You know, I can go into what Firstborn Princess said one time, but it's real heavy, but how we are the Nation of Islam. And that's always kind of been the teaching.
I was going to ask, like, would you say, Allahmal, would you say like the Robert Walker and what he presented to the youth at that time, was it, I don't want to use the word better than what the father did, but would you say it was more effective in teaching the science of Islam, or, you know?
I would say this, that Master Robert Walker went after the advanced intelligence God, okay? Because he had a way, if he knew you, like when understanding came to myself, okay, and asked me about would I like to, go further than 120, I say, this, I asked him, is there such a thing? He said, yeah, brother. Then that's when he went into the 130. I said, oh, okay. He says, I'm gonna.
I meant to ask you about that too.
So he didn't deal with the younger babies. He left that for the gods to teach, because those that was continuously teaching. Because you got to remember, the minister in the lecture that he gave, which I asked him, was, who is the risen man? And he told the 5%. There was one 5% in there that tried to correct him on quoting who is the original man. The minister did not say father of civilization. So, no, Farrakhan, come on, you made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. He tried to correct the minister. The minister was so soft, it was so smooth. He just said, brother, if you only understood why, that we no longer use father of civilization. Because when you do that, you're not including the black woman in her being the original herself. Anyway, he went into it some kind of way, and he said, "Well, what I would ask for you all to do." Personally, he asked me. He said he wanted me to help the believers in the nation of Islam study their lesson, know how to learn their lesson, and he said it openly on the lecture. He said it openly. He said, brothers and sisters, you all that have the supreme wisdom, whatever you want to call it, 120, I would love for y'all to help me. See, that's what the call for help. So it was the way the minister did it, that if you was a 5%er, you knew that you was going to help this man, because he was going to build a nation that you eventually was going to, most of those that was there became members of the Nation of Islam at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You see, there's no arguing that, So,
that makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, the brothers was real advanced with the science and everything, so that only makes sense that they would, excel or, go on to become ministers, great ministers, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Was Minister Minister Hafiz out of New York? Was he Wisdom Body, or?
No, he was a 5%.
Okay. I want to clarify that when you said in dealing with Brother Robin walking, what he teach, maybe was it more impactful or whatnot.
Yeah. I meant to say that I was to Brother Franklin, but I wanted you brothers to add on, because y'all would have heard the history.
I would say definitely not, in my opinion, because it's all synthesized and one and the same. It did start in a sense with Allah the Father, and I think that. Because there's two aspects. You got.
Wait! I missed that. I missed what you're. How do you come back to that question and answer what you're?
Yeah. No.
Oh, he was just dealing with the same question I asked you, but I was going to ask the brothers or the guards if they wanted to touch on the same question as well.
Yeah.
Was it more effective than what Brother Clarence gave us, or the father gave us?
Oh, okay. Go ahead. All right.
Yeah, what I think? See, this is the key difference too, great guys, because there's different aspects of this whole thing that they identify now with the descriptive term as Muslim gods. In the beginning, they all was Muslim gods. Allah the Father, Abu Shahid, Ubika, Old Man Justice, it's an actual fact. They come from the Nation of Islam. They never denounced Islam. They never denounced 120. They never denounced the most honorable Messiah Elijah Muhammad. Where was born, a born his life, just like the day's decree is. They stood on that, right? Firstborns also stood on that. Now, within the later, I think as time went on, there was a little bit of differences and changes or whatever. But I see Allah in the Wisdom Body just as another 5%er, as Black Messiah was. You know what I mean? I just see everybody one and the same. If you teaching these lessons, you could be free and independent in teaching these lessons. But here's the distinction. Mm-hmm. I think that, as the Honorable Mr. Les Farrakhan says so beautifully, I've heard many Muslim ministers speak on this, elder ministers or the pioneers, where they said that, life in itself starts off like a clock. Like the God said, a lot of lessons come from the Quran. This one comes from the Quran. And it's like when you see the clock is ugly, the clock is bloody, you know what I mean? But the knowledge of wisdom excels it, you know what I mean? Eventually to where this grows into 9 months, it grows into a baby, to the arm, leg, arm, head, to a full, beautiful human being, Allah God, arm, leg, arm, head, God of the universe, right? Same thing kind of with the 5%ers. I don't necessarily withhold the brother Robert Walker to a certain moral standard because he too dealt with a lot of the different explosives that all of the 5%ers dealt with. And a lot of father, some people criticize him, but like, well, why didn't he clean the 5%ers up? And I'm just being frank because this is the day and time we live in, and all truth will be made manifest. A lot of the brothers became, addicted to drugs. A lot of brothers and sisters became addicted to alcohols. A lot of us, sold it. We dealt with a lot of vices in the 5%, and a lot of father, the way he was wise and trying to guide the brothers said, well, yeah, but eventually one day you have to give up all of this, right? The best way to master this is to leave it alone, right? You can't call yourself a Muslim if you don't smoke and drink and all of this, right? So eventually this knowledge would take root, and eventually the discipline would set in where we would just kind of do away with a lot of the wrong foods, you know what I mean? And then we'll start advocating the scribe laws of Islam to the same person that ability, the rules and regulations of civilization. We become civilized. One having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, and refinement, right? We would take on the culture and refinement. And this is kind of where you get this whole Muslim God thing. It kind of was born out of that. So what a lot of father, did, and of course he got it from Allah, the person, and the most honorable Mr. Elijah Muhammad, and the ministers, Brother Malcolm X, all included. So what's known as Muslim God in a sense today sometimes takes on a different meaning only because we're on the other side of history where we learned from this. Not only have we learned, the nation of gods and earth have also learned. Everybody have learned. And Islam comes after everything else fails.
That's right.
So now you see a lot of brothers dealing with culture and refinement. But the last step, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said this: one can never be considered civilized if they deny Allah and the messenger. Number one. So that's the last step brothers got to take, is bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and the most honorable Mr. Elijah Muhammad is his messenger.
Peace. Can I add on?
Yes, sir.
One thing I see that usually the problem is, it's like we always in competition. We always competing. Who's better than who? Knowledge reigns supreme. So let's say, okay, I'm in the ranks of the Nation of Islam as an FOI, but I got knowledge of self in 85 as a 5%. When it was introduced to me from a brother from Medina, from Brooklyn, in the prison, I worked at Fort Leavenworth. I was in the military. And when I got knowledge of self, the brother introduced it to me as he was in the 5% Nation of Islam. I learned of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Farah Muhammad through them. And so I didn't, when I heard of the minister later on, I didn't even know it was separate, basically. And so, it's just like now, as I'm a student FOI minister in the Nation of Islam and study group here in Bentonville, South Carolina, North Carolina area. I might have a better understanding of the lessons and go into the lessons better than some of the FOI, but that doesn't mean I'm better than them or they weaker or inferior to me, because somebody might know something or have an understanding of the lessons that I don't know. I learned from all you guys. I learned from brothers from the Nation of God. Look, I'm on YouTube watching If Mega videos. I'm on YouTube watching those videos and learning from some of the guys that's on there. Why? Because that's knowledge. Anybody that's presenting knowledge, how can one person presenting a knowledge that you haven't heard yet be better than somebody else presenting a knowledge that you haven't heard? You know?
That's absolutely. You know, there's no big eyes, no little U's. If we really,
right.
And one of the things that my main goal and mission is to help the minister to the best of my ability bring unity amongst all sects, okay? Which is from the Christian perspective, wherever you come from, right? We have to develop a love. See, love conquers all. If we really understand what Paul says in the Bible, he says that the love, and I always stress that, the love of the brotherhood is the best love. If we don't love each other, you so we really
Y'all didn't cut your phones on silent.
there's what we call the interruption, you know, the division, the this. I remember in '85 when we went to the garden, okay, Madison Square Garden. All right. I end up on the check post with Khalid. I'm helping Khalid and people trying to break the garden doors down to come in. They want to hear the minister. Okay. So that was a monumental situation because Mayor Koch didn't give a damn about Minister Farrakhan. Didn't care about Minister Farrakhan. The Jews were saying, what do we want? They want the minister's head. They were shouting. That was a serious time. But I remember one thing that Khalid told me. He said, brother, you do not move from this post, you know? So was rushing people in, trying to, you know, get everybody in so that things can start. I'll never forget that day. And since that day, when I walked with Khalid, you know, I used to walk with him on 125th, you know, he gave me permission to go into the courtroom to get young brothers, you know, parole or not parole necessarily, but released into the nation. That's what I was doing. I was always doing something, you know. And my love for the nation, Islam, is the prescription, the prescribed law. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you will be punished. You're going to punish your damn self. That's the nation of Islam. Punishing your behind, you know. So the key of it is, if you study Ezekiel 3 verse 18 to its totality, Luke 12 verse 47, if you really look into the watchman, you will come to understand how a man is beaten with many stripes. Okay? My God said something very important. You're not supposed to seek being better than anyone. That's one of the things I wanted to speak about.
Mm-hmm.
In the nation, you know, everywhere, it's like there's competition going on, man. You know, so ain't nothing can happen. You know, this one is on YouTube talking against that one on YouTube talking against, man, all of that must stop. It has to stop. And how it stops is that those that is qualified. You know, I spoke to Melchizedek again Saturday. He comes by pass out certain lessons. The yellow, the small yellow book of 5%, and some literature that he had. He said, God, he said, Allahmal, when are you going to stop being afraid to give what you have? I said, God, I said, I'm not afraid. It's that I never thought that it was necessary because of what I see going on, man, between all of y'all. I don't like this. I really, really don't. I'm not saying that because, the ministers say that. It's just that's how I was raised, man. I've been in all ciphers. So I stand on that I am all. One of our brothers that decided to take that attribute, he went back to the essence. He used to work for me. He was supposed to come to work the following week before he passed away.
Yeah, so I am Allah.
I am all.
Yeah, aka Washington.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask you real quick too. We about to close it out in a few minutes because it's like 8 now.
Yeah.
But real quick, I wanted to ask you about that 1 to 30 lesson that you said that the brothers had developed in the Wisdom Body Cipher. Yeah. And I think you mentioned some other lessons too, but that one in particular I wanted to ask, and that was one of the reasons that brought the question about the effectiveness. Like, which one, do you think it was more effective? Because brothers like, let's just say like the Nation of Gods and Earth, for instance, like whereas they may still quote from the same lessons, like these brothers, as you said, have developed new lessons. The 1 to 30 and the other one that you mentioned the other time. So I wanted to ask you about that. What is that dealing with, the 1 to 30? And how does that relate to what we have as, as the 5%?
The 1 to 30 is about all of the creations. Basically the creation of this, creation of that, the creation of so on and so forth. We can go into it, but since we're getting to close, I don't want to go. But there's that lesson. That 30 question and 30 answers is called Lost Found Muslim lesson number 3. Then you have Lost and Found Muslim lesson number 4. That is 12 powerful question and answer. Those question and answer basically comes from, a lot. There's a lot of the answers is from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, basically. Things that he said, how he said it, and how it was put together. But those lessons, the minister said this, and I hope that through Islam find a way to ask the minister about self, Allahmal Allah. Because that's what he knows me by. And we archangels remain archangels. I became the 13th archangel for a reason. That's the knowledge, understanding of the completion of the 13-point flag that was created, to show and prove that everything has to come to knowledge, understanding. It has to come to their foundation. See, it gives birth to the culture of the black man from its root. And then you go back to his root and you do research. You got historians like Brother Wakeel. You got researchers like Brother True Islam. We all have a job to do. And we have to do it in unison with one another, with love to one another. And we have to. We was planning a meeting before the pandemic. We wanted as Muslim God. And now, I'm gonna say this: when I went into the mosque, I said I was a Muslim God because they told me I couldn't be a God. So I said, okay, I'll be a Muslim God. You know, so that name been around since I don't know if before I went in. It doesn't matter, but I'm trying to give the history here. Because they said, man, you can't bring this in here, man. You know, you can't. That's Clarence stuff, man. If you want to, no, okay, well, okay, no, you know, I'll cut it. You know, I'll cut it. But
They told me the same thing.
yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
said, well, I'll be a Muslim God. You know, they can't deny me of that. And then I found out at a later time that in theology of time, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the first God was a Muslim. So he was a Muslim God. I said, oh, okay, so I wasn't wrong. You know, I leave it at that. But there's,
Yes, sir.
My God, I'm going to help you. I have some things that, you know, I mean, most of the ministers in the Nation of Islam don't have. And that's I don't know if y'all can see this book. See this book here?
Oh, okay. Yeah, of the curriculum.
That goes into the questions of why. Why the question is asked, why? And I'll go into that at another time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, yeah, we'll close it out.
So much, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I'll let you close us out, great God. And, you know, like I said, we definitely have to come back on. And I was going to say, I wanted you to try to get a hold of a flag, if you could. You know,
there's a couple of young brothers that used to come every weekend to the mosque to come build with me that was doing the history of Robert and the angel. Right. They live in Trenton. Now, I'll try to get a hold of them because they have the physical flag. They have physical flag.
Right. If you could get like a flag and probably, you know, like some of those lessons that you were, you know, talking about, the 1 to 30 and just a few of them. And I can do the share screen so we can kind of put them up. And as we put it up, you can kind of go through it, walk us through it. You know, I'll try to see if we can do that the next time. You know.
I think more teaching needs to be done than fighting. Or you know, too much fighting. Like my God said, you know, the division is crazy as hell, man. You know,
I mean, I gotta say this though, real quick. I mean, you know, I know a lot of guards don't like to hear it, but the fighting is necessary. I mean, I gotta say, I hate to look like the bad apple here, but this is something that has to happen. We have, before we step to the white man, we're gonna fight our own. Believe it or not, I'm just gonna say that. and I'm not talking about fight. I'm talking about your intellect, because a lot of our people still have that white man's intellect that we gotta bust up. You know what I'm saying? So you know,
clean up house first.
Because this is how I see it too, God. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, evil things happen when good men sit around and do nothing, right? The Qur'an teaches us to fight in the best of manners, you know, that to knock out, you know, the brains of falsehood, right? And the thing is, brother, with all due respect, if brothers going around lying in the name of Allah or condemning Allah God and the Most Honorable Mr. Elijah Muhammad and what we call the life-giving teachings, Allah the Father told us this is our book of life, the supreme wisdom. Literally, it is life and death.
Right.
And life and death have no partnerships, as we're taught. So at some point in time, we must teach the truth and make word is bond, because bond is life, regardless to whom or what. Allah is not a respecter of persons. So all this wisdom that's coming is coming from the same line of divine, coming from, whether you want to say 76 trillion years or 66 trillion years, up into this day and time, we're looking at the fulfillment. And a person literally will lose their life if we do not teach this knowledge to them right and exact. You was building on a Wisdom Cipher degree, right? So from knowledge God, what does it mean in the civilization, to what are the scribed laws of Islam, to the said person, that ability, and then we can go into knowledge born, what is the duty of a civilized person? And it deals with, you know, and if we warn them, if we do not warn the wicked, right, that same wicked man will die in his own iniquity.
Iniquity.
The law says, but his blood will require
Your
thine
hands.
hand. And this is where we are at in this day and time.
We need
Word is calm
to
and
teach.
calm in life. We must teach this truth.
Yep.
And even the brothers that's weak in it need to get it. Because this is going to literally save our life. You know, literally.
You're right.
And as Muslim gods or whatever, Muslims in the nation of Islam, we don't mind laying down our life for Almighty God Allah. Our life and death is all for Allah. Our sacrifice is all for Allah, the Lord of all of the worlds. And that's the same mantra of the 5%ers. We just literally got the name clear because brothers were so against the term 5%ers. We had to fight for that, right? The only reason my brothers call themselves 5%ers a day because a lot of the work that was put in by the brothers that was consistent with 120 and did not.
The Muslim gods. Yeah, the Muslim gods.
The video of Allah, the photo, the Honorable Clarence 13X Smith, to be exact, so everybody know who I'm talking about, saying the 5%ers, the 5%ers, the 5%ers. It's very important that knowledge equality degree, going up to the Wisdom Cipher degree, it is important that we teach that. And all people need to hear that. So if we deal with opposition with that, so be it. Because again, we the ones that's on the knowledge. This is today's degree, today's mathematics. Show me the brother that's dealing with that, that's not dealing with this. You know, so
we did,
and we love our people, and we here to save our people, but at the same time, you know, we will defend Allah and the messenger. And all Muslims are 5%ers in accordance with that. You know, like you said, no big guys, no little news.
Before we close, I'll just share this though. We had a wellness call, right? In the Believers in Mosque number 7 and 7C, and we had a special guest. You know, so I didn't. I was drinking my tea, listening a little bit. Then the special guest came on. That was the Supreme Captain. So he went into some things that goes to what you were saying, Wakeel. He said, big fear awaits a wide awake man. He said, he stretched his hand. He said he wants a mosque in the Bronx. So I'm wondering what the hell that came from. You know, he didn't say no other brothers, you know, in the way that he said it. And he told Captain Dennis told me that that's what the Supreme Captain wanted. This is before I heard it again, you know, what he said. But I said that to say this. We got to go back to being bold enough to start ciphers in the park, on the sidewalk, wherever we see people, you know, we need to just ask them. I mean, do y'all know what happened with so-and-so? Let me tell you why it happened. Then you go, you know, however it is that we're gonna teach, that's our calling. Let's just do that. And I thank you for coming on and listening to your baby brother. You know, it's only one great, and that's Allah. And we all Allah.
Yes, sir.
You know,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir. But yes, sir.
Let's close with a short prayer.
Yes, sir.
I like the success prayer. Oh Allah, we beseech your help and we ask thy mercy, for we believe in you and trust in you for all that we need. For we are helpers in your cause with your apostle. So please grant to us success. You know, believe it or not, when you do the success prayer, you're really asking for success. You know, we have to do it, brother. You know, this team, team, you know, is a powerful. You got, wow, this, oh man, this body right here, you know, Let's understand why why us for. Let's try to understand that. So the next time we come on, we can say, oh yeah, I see now why, you know, there's a reason, man. There's a reason. You got the great historian now, is that great Wakeel Allah. You know, hey, he in his own rank, he can't be touched when it comes to the history, you know. And whatever I give, he'll put it in the history, you know. That's how it works, you know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So may Allah in all the bodies, you know, give life to each other, man.
Indeed.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Well, it was good building with your brothers.
Indeed.
Yes, sir. Mike. Yes, peace to the gods. Peace.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right, guys. Peace.